The first blast shook the fortress walls and echoed through the alien capital. Smoke rose beyond the horizon, where the human fleet had broken through the last defensive line. Soldiers in gold and crimson rushed through the palace corridors. Their voices were low, their movements quick, but their eyes were full of unease. At the highest balcony, King Zorath watched the burning skies. His emerald skin glowed faintly in the orange firelight, his golden armor catching every spark in the air. He was known for never bowing to another race, but the battle below showed a truth even he could not ignore. The humans were not slowing down. Commander Kale stood beside the king, his black combat suit smeared with ash and alien blood. He had fought in dozens of wars across the stars, but none like this. The humans moved with terrifying precision. They did not just fight, they dismantled their enemies, piece by piece until nothing stood against them. The great throne room was filled with the scent of burning incense and the tension of unspoken defeat. Advisors whispered about treaties, bribes, and desperate counterattacks. Zorath listened but said nothing. Then, without turning from the balcony, he spoke to Kale in a voice like grinding stone. "Bring me the human commander. I will offer him anything to end this war." When Captain Elias Vance entered the throne room, the guards tightened their grips on their spears. The human's presence was like a weapon in itself, calm, cold, and unreadable. He wore no crown, no precious stones, only battle-worn armor and the faint scent of smoke. His eyes locked on Zorath's without fear. Zorath rose from his throne, every step deliberate. "Human," he said, "name your price. I will give you treasures beyond your imagining. Gold from 1,000 worlds, ships to command, power over planets." His voice carried the weight of centuries of authority, but the human did not blink. Elias took a slow step forward. The silence between them felt heavier than the walls themselves. Every alien present leaned in, expecting him to speak of wealth or power. But his answer was nothing they could have predicted. "I want your fiercest daughter," he said, his tone steady as a blade drawn in battle. The hall froze. Murmurs rippled through the advisors. The king's eyes narrowed, but there was no anger in them, only curiosity. "You speak of Kayla," Zorath said slowly, tasting the name as though it were dangerous. "She is not a prize to be claimed. She's a storm that even my enemies fear." Elias didn't look away. "Then she is exactly who I need." His voice was calm, but it cut through the air sharper than any weapon. In that moment, the war outside seemed almost quiet compared to the storm now brewing within the throne room. Kayla was not in the throne room when her name was spoken. She was in the training halls, where the sound of steel clashing echoed against ancient stone. Her armor bore fresh scratches, her braids swung behind her like a whip, and her eyes burned with focus. Every warrior who faced her knew defeat was only a matter of time. When the king's summons came, she wiped her blade clean and strode toward the palace with long, confident steps. She had heard whispers of the human commander, how his strategies tore through fleets, and how his soldiers fought without fear. She wondered what kind of man would dare to ask for her. The doors opened to reveal her father standing tall, and the human captain watching her approach. Kella's gaze locked with Elias's, and neither looked away. Her lips curved slightly, not in kindness but in the recognition of a challenge. "So you are the one who asks for me," she said, her voice carrying across the hall like a throne. "Dagger." Elias didn't bow. "Yes," he answered. His tone was steady, not arrogant, but certain. "Not as a trophy. Not as a prisoner. I need you for a purpose that will change both our worlds." His words hung in the air, making even the guards shift uncomfortably. The king stepped between them, his heavy golden cape brushing the floor. "If you take her human, you will bear the weight of what she is. She has ended wars by her hand. Alone, she obeys no man, no king, no law but her own." Zorath's eyes glimmered with warning as much as pride. I am not asking her to obey me, Elias said. I am asking her to fight with me. His voice had the calm power of someone who knew exactly what he wanted. That quiet certainty seemed to stir something in Kayla's expression. Though she said nothing yet, the court watched in silence as Kayla circled the human, her eyes studying every inch of him. His armor was practical, scratched and scarred, without the polish of royal display. His hands were steady, his stance balanced, his breathing even. She realized he was measuring her at the same time. Finally, she stopped in front of him. If I go with you, she said, it will not be because my father orders it. It will be because I choose the fight. Her tone was a test, sharp enough to cut if he answered wrong. Then choose, Elias replied without hesitation. He didn't try to impress her with promises or charm. He met her gaze as if the rest of the room didn't exist. That quiet defiance pulled a faint, dangerous smile from her lips. She turned to her father. If the war ends by my hand at his side, then it will be worth it, she said. But if he fails, I will return, and the first blade I raise will be against him. Her words were not a threat to be taken lightly. Zorith's laughter rumbled through the throne room, though it was not entirely without edge. So be it, he declared. You have asked for my fiercest daughter, human. Now you will see what it means to stand beside her. The king's decree rang out, sealing a decision that would be spoken of for generations. Kayla walked toward Elias, her steps deliberate. She stopped beside him, close enough for the scent of battle oil and steel to mix between them. I hope you are as dangerous as they say, she murmured, her voice low but sharp. Because I do not fight for the weak. Elias glanced at her, his lips tilting in the faintest shadow of a smile. Then you have nothing to worry about, he said. They walked from the throne room together, not as allies yet, but as two storms about to collide. Outside, the war still burned. The human ships hovered over the alien capital, their shadows falling across the golden spires. But within those walls, a different battle had just begun. One that would decide the fate of both their peoples. The journey from the alien capital to the human flagship was tense. Kayla rode in silence beside Elias, her sharp eyes studying every corridor they passed. Alien guards kept their distance, unsure whether to fear her more than the human commander she now accompanied. The air was heavy with the sense that something larger than both armies had just begun. When they boarded the human dropship, the difference in worlds became clear. The humans' war machines were practical, built for speed and survival, not beauty. Kayla's gaze lingered on the exposed steel beams, the narrow aisles, the armed soldiers who watched her every move. She felt the weight of their curiosity and their doubt. Elias gave her no explanation, only a steady glance that told her to follow. They moved through the ship until they reached a sealed chamber deep inside. The doors opened to reveal a massive tactical display showing the galaxy in fine detail. Red markers lit up in clusters where battle still raged. Blue markers, few and scattered, marked the human forces. Kayla stepped closer to the display. Your numbers are smaller than I expected, she said. Her tone was not mocking, but assessing. She traced the line of red that cut across the map like a wound. You are fighting an enemy that outnumbers you 10 to 1. Elias pressed a command, and the map shifted to reveal supply routes, weak points, and hidden ambushes. Numbers don't win wars, he replied. Precision does. And I think you can give us that precision. His words carried no flattery, only a clear expectation. She folded her arms, testing his conviction. Why me? Your soldiers are disciplined. Your captains are skilled. What makes you think I can give you more than they can? Her voice was calm, but there was a spark in her eyes, as if daring him to justify his choice. Because you know how your people fight, Elias said. You know their tactics, their pride, their blind spots. You have fought for them long enough to see their weaknesses. And you have the will to use that knowledge. His gaze did not waver as he spoke, Kayla studied him in silence for a long moment. She knew he was right. She had led her father's forces through victories that should have been impossible, but she had also seen the cracks in their armor. Cracks only someone who had been part of them could exploit. She turned away from the display and walked toward the viewport. Outside, the human fleet moved in tight formation, smaller ships orbiting the hulking flagship like hunters circling. A kill. There was no wasted movement, no sign of panic. It was a style of war very different from her people's. "I will fight with you," she said finally. "But if I stand with you, your soldiers must accept me as one of their own. If they see me as an enemy, I will fight alone, and that will serve no one." Her words were firm, but not without reason. Elias nodded once. "Then they will accept you. But you will earn it, not by my command, but by your actions. They will follow you if you prove worthy." His voice was steady, but there was an edge that promised he would not shield her from the challenge. The door opened, and two human officers entered. One was tall and lean, with a scar running across his cheek. The other was shorter, broad-shouldered, and wore the insignia of a fleet captain. They looked at Kayla with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity, but neither spoke until Elias addressed them. "This is Kayla," Elias said. "She will be leading the next strike operation." His announcement caused the taller officer's jaw to tighten, but he said nothing. The shorter one gave a small nod, as if already deciding to watch her closely. Kayla met their stares without flinching. "If you doubt me," she said, "stand in my way during the battle, and you will learn why my people call me the Stormblade." Her voice was cold steel wrapped in silk. Neither officer replied. As they left the chamber, Elias walked beside her. "You've made your first impression," he said. "Now you'll have to live up to it." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of every battle yet to come. The War Council gathered in the flagship's main strategy hall. Holographic maps hovered above the long table, showing enemy positions and shifting battle lines. Human officers stood on one side. Alien advisors who had surrendered stood on the other. In the middle, Kayla's presence drew every eye. She was the bridge between two worlds that had been at war only hours before. Elias began the briefing with clear, precise words. "Our target is the Velkar stronghold," he said. "It controls the central supply network for their entire fleet. Take it, and they will starve in weeks." The officers leaned forward, their faces tense. The enemy stronghold was known for its brutal defenses. Kayla stepped toward the map and traced a line along the outer defenses. "Your fleet will never survive a direct assault," she said. Her tone was blunt but calculated. "But here, at the southern wall, their guard is light. They believe the terrain is impassable. They have forgotten I know the mountain paths better than anyone." The human officers exchanged glances. One of them finally spoke. "Those paths are narrow and unstable. You'd be marching soldiers into a death trap." His doubt was sharp, but Kayla didn't flinch. "Only if you move like soldiers," she replied. "We will move like hunters. Quiet, fast, invisible until it's too late." Elias nodded. "She will lead the infiltration team," he said. "I will command the fleet's distraction assault. When the enemy focuses on me, Kayla will breach the stronghold from the south." His voice left no room for argument. Even those who doubted her could hear his certainty. Kayla's eyes met his for a brief moment. It was not gratitude, but an acknowledgement between warriors. She didn't need him to defend her, but she understood the weight of what he had just done, placing his plan, his soldiers, and perhaps the war itself in her hands. The meeting ended, and preparations began. Kayla moved through the human camp, inspecting weapons, studying the soldiers who would follow her. They were disciplined, but she could feel their hesitation. Her presence was still a question mark in their minds. She would have to give them an answer they would never forget. As night fell, she stood before the infiltration team. 20 soldiers, armored and armed, waited for her orders. She spoke without raising her voice. "We will not be seen. We will not be heard. The first they will know of us is when their gates fall and their blood weights the stones." The cold fire in her words drew the attention of even the most doubtful soldier. Elias approached before departure. "The enemy will throw everything at my fleet once the distraction begins," he said. "That will be your moment. Don't hesitate." His tone was not commanding her, but trusting her. It was a difference Kayla noticed. She gave him a single nod. "I won't." Her voice was steady, certain. They stood there for a moment longer, two commanders on the edge of something that could change everything. Then the alarm lights turned red, and the plan was set in motion. The infiltration team moved under cover of darkness, slipping into the mountains that loomed like jagged teeth over the stronghold. The air was thin, the paths narrow, the drop into the abyss only a step away. Yet Kayla moved as if the mountain itself bent to her will, each step chosen with precision. Hours passed, and the glow of the stronghold's defenses came into view. Towers of black stone rose from the cliffs, their weapons scanning the skies for the fleet that was even now engaging them far to the north. The southern wall was, as she had said, lightly guarded, almost forgotten. Kayla signaled for silence and led her team to a hidden crevice in the rock. From there, they could see the enemy patrols moving in predictable patterns. She timed their movements, then turned to her second in command. "When I give the word, we move. No noise. No hesitation. If one of us falls, the rest keep going." The soldier nodded. They all understood what was at stake. This was not just about the battle. It was about proving she belonged here, that her blade was as sharp for the humans as it had been for her own people. Failure was not an option she would allow herself to consider. She drew her sword, its edge catching the faint light from the stronghold. Her heart was steady, her mind clear. She glanced once toward the sky, where distant flashes marked Elias's fleet in battle. The moment had come. Kayla raised her hand, and the team froze. The patrol ahead had just turned the corner, their footsteps fading into the night. The silence in the mountains was sharp, broken only by the distant rumble of battle from the north. Somewhere beyond the peaks, Elias was drawing the enemy's attention as planned. She moved first, slipping from the crevice into the open path. The team followed, their boots soundless on the rocky ground. Every step had to be exact. One misstep, and the loose stones would betray them. Kayla's senses were alive to every movement, every shift in the wind. They reached the base of the southern wall without a sound. The wall rose above them like a shadow carved from the mountain itself. Black stone, cold and unyielding, stretched high into the night sky. Kayla studied the guard rotation again, her sharp eyes catching the pattern no one else would notice. She signaled for the grappling lines to be prepared. One soldier fired the first line upward, the hook catching on the edge of the wall. The rope tightened, and Kayla went first. She scaled the wall with practiced speed, her armor barely scraping against the stone. The others followed, their movements precise. When they reached the top, the guards still had their backs turned. Kayla drew her blade in silence. She struck the first guard before he could turn, her sword finding its mark with deadly accuracy. The second guard had time to widen his eyes before falling. The team moved quickly, securing the wall and pulling the bodies out of sight. From there, position, the heart of the stronghold lay before them. Towers of black stone surrounded a central keep where the supply controls would be located. The courtyard below was dimly lit, with only scattered patrols moving in lazy circles. Kayla could almost feel the overconfidence in the air. She signaled for the team to split. Half moved toward the eastern tower to disable the alarm systems. The rest stayed with her, heading for the central keep. Every shadow became an ally, every patch of darkness a shield. The stronghold's defenders had no Idea the enemy was already inside their walls. At the base of the keep, 2 guards blocked the entrance. Kayla motioned for her team to hold back. She stepped forward, drawing their attention with a deliberate scrape of her blade on the stone. The first guard charged, swinging his weapon in a wide arc. She stepped inside his guard and dropped him. In one motion. The second fell before he could call for help. The doors to the keep were thick and reinforced, but not invincible. Kella's team worked quickly, planting charges in the hinges. The muted blast barely reached the ears of the nearest patrol. Smoke curled from the doorway as they stepped inside. The air within was heavy with heat from the forges below. Rows of machinery churned, processing and organizing the supplies that kept the enemy fleet alive. Kayla moved through the corridors, cutting down the few guards who stood in their way. Every second brought them closer to the control room. They found it behind a heavy steel door. Inside, glowing panels displayed the supply network. Kella's second-in-command moved to the controls, planting the devices that would corrupt the system and cut off resources to the entire fleet. Once activated, it would cripple the enemy's ability to fight. Suddenly, shouts echoed from the hall. The enemy had realized the breach. Kayla turned to her team. "Hold the door," she ordered. Her voice carried no fear, only command. She positioned herself at the entrance, blade ready as the first attackers charged. The clash was fierce. Steel rang against steel, boots scraped against stone, and the air filled with the shouts of battle. Kayla fought with a precision and fury that made even her human allies pause for a heartbeat. Every strike was deliberate, every move decisive. Behind her, the sabotage was complete. "It's done," her second-in-command called. Without a word, Kayla gave the signal to retreat. They fought their way back through the keep, cutting down anyone in their path. The southern wall loomed ahead once more, and beyond it, the mountains waited to carry them home. As they scaled down the ropes into the darkness, the first explosions rocked the stronghold. Flames rose from the supply forges and the shouts of the enemy turned to confusion. Kayla didn't look back. The mission was complete, and the war had just shifted in their favor. The mountains swallowed the infiltration team as they made their way back toward the human fleet. The cold night air bit at their faces, but the heat of battle still burned in their blood. Behind them, the stronghold's towers glowed with orange fire, and the sound of distant explosions rolled through the peaks. Kayla led the way without slowing. Her steps were steady, her mind already moving to the next fight. She could hear the faint hum of human aircraft approaching to extract them. Every soldier who followed her now did so with silent respect. She had earned her place among them. The dropship descended with a roar of engines, scattering dust and loose stones. Elias stepped out before the ramp had fully lowered. His eyes scanned the returning team, counting every head. Relief flickered in his expression when he saw Kayla at the front. Her armor streaked with soot but her stance unshaken. "You did it," he said simply. His words carried more weight than a speech. Kayla gave a small nod, her expression calm. "Your distraction worked," she replied. "They never saw us coming." There was no boasting in her voice, only the statement of fact. As the team boarded the dropship, the comms came alive with reports. Enemy supply lines were collapsing. Fleet movements were erratic. Without their stronghold, the enemy command was scrambling to regain control. The victory had come faster than anyone expected. On the flight back, Elias sat across from Kayla. The soldiers between them glanced at her with something new in their eyes. No longer doubt, no longer suspicion. They had seen her fight, and that had erased the line between alien and ally. She noticed, but she said nothing. When they reached the flagship, the War Council was already waiting. The officers stood around the strategy table, their eyes on the shifting holographic map. Elias and Kayla entered together, and conversations halted. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The council listened as Kayla described. The southern wall, the breach, and the destruction of the forges. Her words were precise, her tone unwavering. She spoke like a commander, not a guest in someone else's army. Elias stood beside her, silent, letting her voice carry the victory. When she finished, the lead strategist leaned forward. "With their supply lines broken, we can force them into open battle," he said. "That is where our fleet will crush them." His confidence was high, but Kayla raised a hand in warning. "They will strike back harder than you expect." She said, "They will not retreat quietly. They will aim for your heart, and they will not care how much they burn to reach it." Her words cut through the optimism in the room. Elias turned to the strategist. "Prepare the fleet for both offense and defense," he said. "We press the advantage, but we don't underestimate them." His tone left no room for argument. Orders were given, and preparations began for the next phase. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Kayla stood looking out at the stars. The glow of distant battles flickered like dying embers. Elias joined her, his reflection appearing beside hers in the glass. "You've changed things," he said. "For my people and yours." She tilted her head slightly. "This is only one battle," she replied. "The war will decide if anything truly changes." Her voice carried no doubt, only the weight of someone who had fought too many wars to believe in easy victories. For a moment, they stood in silence, the vastness of space stretching out before them. Then Elias spoke again. "When this war ends, what will you do?" The question was quiet, but it held more meaning than the words alone. Kayla's eyes remained on the stars. "That depends," she said. "If my father still sees me as his daughter, or as the blade he no longer holds." The answer was as much for herself as it was for him. Elias studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Until then, we fight." It was not a promise, but an understanding between two warriors who had chosen the same path. The war was not over, but for now, they had struck a blow the enemy would never forget. The enemy did not wait long to respond. Within days, their fleet surged forward in a wave of black steel and burning engines. The skies over 3 human-held worlds lit up with the fire of battle. Reports flooded into the flagship, each one confirming what Kayla had warned. They were striking straight at the heart. Elias stood in the command center, watching the holographic map shift with each incoming alert. His jaw tightened, but his orders were sharp and controlled. "Hold the outer defenses. Keep the civilians moving to safe zones." His voice cut through the tension like a blade. Kayla entered, her armor already fastened. "Where do you need me?" she asked. She did not wait for praise or approval. She knew this was the moment to prove her loyalty again, not only to Elias but to the cause they now fought for. Elias pointed to a flashing red marker on the map. "Here, the outpost at Varel's Edge. If they take it, they'll have a direct path to our central command. You'll take a strike team and hold it until reinforcements arrive." His tone carried the weight of trust and necessity. She nodded once and left without hesitation. Minutes later, she was aboard a dropship, the engines roaring as it cut through the dark. The soldiers with her had fought beside her in the mountains. They met her gaze with silent determination, ready to follow her into another impossible fight. When they reached Varel's Edge, the scene was already chaos. Enemy forces poured through the shattered outer walls. Smoke and dust choked the air. Kayla's boots hit the ground before the dropship had fully landed. She drew her blade and charged forward, cutting a path through the first wave of attackers. Soldiers fanned out behind her, securing choke points and rallying the defenders. Kayla moved with ruthless precision, her strikes fast and final. She had no time for wasted motion. Every enemy that fell bought them another heartbeat to hold. The outpost. From the command bunker, the outpost leader shouted over the comms. "We can't hold much longer." Kayla's voice came back steady. "You will hold. We are not here to die. We are here to keep them from taking one more step." Her words steadied the defenders like iron in their spines. The battle dragged into the night. Waves of enemy troops crashed against their lines, but each one broke under the defense Kayla had built. Her soldiers fought with the same quiet fury she carried, their movements sharp and synchronized. Then a new threat emerged, a massive siege walker lumbering toward the gates, its cannons glowing with deadly light. Kayla knew it would tear through their defenses in minutes if it reached firing range. She signaled to her second-in-command. "Cover me," she said. "I'll take it down." Her tone left no room for argument. She sprinted through the battlefield, weaving between craters and fallen soldiers. The walker's guns tracked her, but she was too fast. She reached its legs and leapt onto the armored plating. Her blade pierced the joint of its knee, sparks erupting as she severed its power conduits. The machine shuddered and tilted, its weapons flickering out. Kayla climbed to the cockpit and tore open the hatch, cutting down the crew inside. With a final push, she leapt clear as the walker collapsed, shaking the ground like a falling mountain. Cheers rose from the defenders, but Kayla wasted no time. "Back to the walls," she called. "They'll come harder now." Her soldiers obeyed instantly, their morale surging from the victory. The enemy pressed again, but without the walker, their momentum faltered. Hours later, the reinforcements arrived. Human gunships roared overhead, unleashing fire into the enemy ranks. The remaining attackers broke and retreated into the night. Varel's edge was scarred and burning, but it still stood. Elias arrived with the reinforcement fleet, landing beside Kayla on the cracked stone of the outpost. He looked at the ruined gates, the bodies of the enemy, and the soldiers still standing. "You held it," he said, his voice low but full of respect. Kayla met his eyes. "I told you we would." Her tone was calm, but there was fire in her gaze. The war was still raging, but each victory was another step toward the end they both sought. The final battle began before dawn. The enemy fleet gathered in one massive formation, their black ships blotting out the stars. The human and allied forces assembled in answer, the two sides facing each other across the cold expanse of space. Every soldier knew that by nightfall, one side would no longer have the strength to fight. Elias stood on the flagship's command deck, the hum of the engines beneath his feet. His eyes moved over the tactical map, memorizing every enemy position. Kayla stood beside him, armored and armed, her presence as steady as the steel around them. There was no fear in her, only focus. The comms crackled with a transmission. It was King Zorath. His image appeared in the air before them, his golden armor gleaming, his expression unreadable. "Human," he said, "withdraw your forces. I will deal with our enemies myself, or face the end with them." His tone was heavy with pride and challenge. Elias didn't answer immediately. He glanced at Kayla, reading the conflict in her eyes. This was her father, her blood, but also the ruler of the enemy's people. "If you go to him," Elias said quietly, "this battle changes. For everyone." His voice was calm, but the choice he spoke of was not simple. Kayla stepped forward into the projection's light. "Father," she said, "I fight to end this war, not to keep it burning. Stand with us, and your people will live. Stand against us, and they will fall." Her voice carried across the deck, steady and unyielding. Zorath's eyes narrowed. "You speak as though you are no longer mine," he said. "Have the humans taken you from your people?" Kayla shook her head. "No, I choose to fight for a future where both survive. That is my decision." Her final words struck like a blade drawn in silence. For a long moment, the king said nothing. Then his image faded from the air, leaving only the empty space where his presence had been. Elias turned to his crew. "All ships prepare to engage." The fleet moved forward, engines flaring bright against the darkness. The first class shook. The stars, beams of light cut through the void, explosions blooming in silence. Kayla's strike craft dove into the thick of the fighting, her team following without hesitation. She weaved between enemy fire, her weapon striking with deadly accuracy on the enemy flagship. Zorith watched his fleet begin to falter. His eyes followed the movements of one fighter in particular, the one cutting through his best squadrons. With surgical precision, he knew it was her, his fiercest daughter. The storm he had raised. The battle reached its breaking point when the enemy flagship moved to target Elias's ship directly. Kayla saw the danger and broke formation, driving her craft straight toward the massive vessel. She knew she could not destroy it alone, but she could buy the seconds needed for the fleet to respond. She struck hard, disabling the flagship's primary weapons. Enemy fighters swarmed her, but she held them off, her craft spinning through the chaos. Elias's ship unleashed its full firepower, tearing through the enemy's command systems. The flagship shuddered under the assault. Then a second transmission came through Zorith again. His voice was different this time, stripped of arrogance. "Hold your fire. This battle is over." Across the field, enemy ships began to power down their weapons. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise of war. Kayla returned to the flagship, her craft scorched and battered. She stepped onto the deck to find Elias watching the enemy fleet withdraw. "He chose to live," Elias said. She nodded. "He chose to let his people live. That is enough for now." Her voice carried no triumph, only relief. Later, as the fleets dispersed and the wounded were tended to, Kayla stood by the viewport. Elias joined her, the stars calm once more beyond the glass. "When you asked for me instead of riches," she said, "did you already know it would end like this?" Her question was quiet, but searching. Elias's lips curved faintly. "No," he said. "I only knew you were the one I wanted at my side, whatever came of it." His answer was simple, but it held the truth of every battle they had fought. Together, Kayla looked back at the stars. The war was over. What came next was unknown, but she knew she would face it the same way she had faced every fight, unafraid, and with her blade ready for whatever came.